Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Bottoms Up, Fins Up with me, Mike, the Hebrew Hammer Brown. We've got Lewis Pops out of Sugarland. I'm in Port Boulevard, Texas, wherever the hell that is. And we are joined by Nick Farabaugh out of Pittsburgh. Nick, I would list off all the things that you're involved in, but I feel like we would take up the entirety of the show. But congrats to you. It seems like you like to keep busy. You're PGA Sports Now. You're with the ACC Network. You're calling games. That's awesome, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, guys, appreciate it. I do like to keep myself a little bit busy and going around Pittsburgh and getting around more than just the Steelers and everything. It's rewarding and everything, so I like to get around, and I'm excited to be on here today, guys.
That's awesome, man. Pops, welcome. You look the same way that you looked last week, so that's good.
Handsome?
No, well, I wouldn't go that far, okay? I would say you are there, and you look the way that you look. How does that sound?
Nick, welcome. We're glad to have you.
All right, Nick, listen, let me apologize ahead of time because the Dolphins are on a 3-game losing streak. We are not in a good mood, okay? The mantra on this show is every time the Dolphins lose, we get screwed by the refs, which is pretty apparent. But let me start here, right? What do you feel like is maybe not a national perception of the Dolphins, but locally in Pittsburgh this week? What are you hearing on the streets of Pittsburgh? How do they feel about this matchup? What are they saying around the water cooler? What are they saying at the sandwich stand at Primanti's, which is arguably the greatest sandwich I have ever heard, ordering a capicola with the fries and the dressing and a Yingling? What are they saying around those areas about the game this weekend?
Yeah, they're saying some very interesting things. And by that, I mean, I don't think that this team is viewed as a 3-3 team. I think it's viewed as a much better team because Tua is going to be back. Like, you actually look at the schedule, and I don't think anyone's going to be struck fear with Teddy Bridgewater or Skylar Thompson. But Tua, with the way he's been playing, absolutely. And I think that's, like, kind of in the perception has been, all right, this is part of that really hard stretch where the Steelers essentially have played every single good team in the NFL. It feels like, not name the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's kind of what this feels like. It feels like there's more history in this one, obviously, personally, between the team. But like, that's what it feels like. I think everyone's viewing the Dolphins as a really, really good team because you look at the team with Tua, and it is a really good team. There are some holes, of course, but it's not a 3-3 squad. They beat the Bills earlier this year. That's something that looks incredible right now because look how good the Bills are. And look at what happened when the Steelers went up to Buffalo. I mean, that is something that has to loom in the mind of everybody, right? So, yeah, I think the perception is this is a really, really good Miami team that's better than their record states. I think that's exactly how everyone views them right now.
So let me ask you this, and you got to be honest. I'm going to set the over-under at 2.5. How many Mitch Trubisky Steelers jerseys do you have hanging in your closet currently?
Settle.
Hello.
Not
so you're talking to the king of jerseys in the top right corner. I mean, you name the Dolphin, he probably has the jersey. Pops, give Nick, who is your most obscure Dolphin jersey that you own in your closet?
Well, since neither one of you were born when a lot of those, please, you were born in 72.
Well,
but I would say my most obscure, Nick, would be Brian Greasy.
Ooh.
Okay.
I like it. Okay. I mean, that's fine. Nick, what's your initial reaction? We've talked about it on the show before. Any guests that we've had on the show, we like to get their opinion. It's the show's opinion that Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, not getting nominated for an Academy Award is one of the biggest travesties in the history of the film industry. Where do you land with that movie being one, just a cinematic, a masterpiece, I guess we can go with. But the fact that it wasn't nominated for an Academy Award, your initial thought on that take?
Well, listen, it's like, it's one of those things that when you look at Ace Ventura, it's like, it's part of culture. It's part of iconic pop culture, right? Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to win an award, but it is really good. It's got witty humor to it. It's got quips that you really need. It's got twists and turns and all these different tunnels you go down. So I could see it. I could see it. No doubt
Okay.
about it.
No, I mean, look, yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't want
Deb.
to say anything, but I think this is where Courtney Cox probably got her big break too. So
This phenomenal movie, phenomenal performance by her. Tua back this weekend. And Kenna, said this earlier. Skyler should let Tua rest one more week. I don't agree with that. Like, my personal sentiment is, if you're healthy, you play. This whole concussion protocol, it's so confusing for the fans. You got some Joe Schmo sitting up in a blimp, 3,000 feet above the stadium, it feels like, and a guy falls, and it's like, hey, he's in concussion protocol. I'm like, first of all, you're not a doctor. Okay, you're a spotter, looking through tunnel vision. Nick, where are you, with, recent, there's so many stories out there of, guys who tested negative at halftime, were able to come back into the game, but Tua's not allowed to come back in the game. He was cleared last week to come back and play, but McDaniel held him out. But then Thompson gets hurt. They bring in Teddy Bridgewater, who was just in concussion protocol. Like, my head hurts.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I consistently look at and say it is a hugely important thing that they have to get right. I just don't think they have it right yet. I mean, you look at the Tua situation, and obviously, I think against the Bills, there was definitely some suspect stuff there. Like, he probably shouldn't have gotten back into the game there. And then played Thursday. I thought that was pretty dangerous, but also I think they overcorrected, right? Because then Teddy got thrown into the concussion protocol when he didn't have it. That's usually what happens. When you are like in a limbo state like this and concussions, and you're trying to figure out what it is, and the NFL's concussion protocol really isn't the golden standard. I mean, like, if you're in high school, or man, like, college has a stricter concussion protocol. High school certainly does. I know when I was in high school, I had to sit out 2 weeks, I think, if I had a concussion. If I was diagnosed with a concussion, you had to miss 2 weeks. That's never going to happen in the NFL, obviously. But like, Kenny Pickett this week had a concussion on Sunday, and he full practiced on Wednesday, which also was odd. Just because, one, maybe he didn't have a concussion? I don't know. But he's in the protocol, so shouldn't he have to follow the same steps as Teddy? Or what happened there? I just think it's about transparency, and it's about nailing it down right, because it's a very important issue, because you have to get the concussion stuff derailed, right? But you also don't want to overcorrect so much to where you're hurting the competitive balance of the sport. And I think that's kind of where they have to find this equilibrium, because there's a lot of stuff that just does not make sense. And I think, and that's the doctors too. I've talked with some people. My whole family feels like they're doctors and everything, and they're like, some of this stuff doesn't make sense. There's loopholes here, there's loopholes there. So all of this has to be tightened and fixed, so we know what to look for, what's going to happen, and this is how it works. That's what's going to happen.
No, I mean, that's fair, man. I mean, in your assessment, we have fans. I mean, Steelers Twitter seems to be a lot more level-headed than Dolphins Twitter. Like, Dolphins Twitter, like, we're ready to spar in the public square and take each other's heads off. If somebody says that Coke is better than Pepsi, I'm like, no, it's not. No, I'm like, guys, it's fine. They're both soda. Like, you're going to be fine. But, like, we have fans who are calling for Skylar Thompson. Some people think that Teddy Bridgewater. Pops wants to, wheel out the corpse that is Dan Marino, at this point.
Earl Morrall. I want Earl Morrall.
Come on, you would take Marino. I mean, sentiment in Pittsburgh. I mean, where are y'all at with Trubisky versus Pickett? It seems almost split, but like, in my eyes, it's not even close. Start Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. Listen, there's defenders on both sides of the aisle. There will be. But I think it's very slanted towards Kenny Pickett. Now,
okay,
how much of that is the hometown kid, right, who's played 5 years at Pitt? I don't know. But it's also, you threw the kid in at halftime with when you could have had 10 days prep before that Jets game, and you just threw him in to get a spark. And so you threw him into the meat of the schedule, literally the hardest part of the schedule. Like, they threw him into versus the Bills, versus the Buccaneers, versus the Dolphins, and versus the Eagles. I mean, that is a tough schedule. And they threw him right into it. His first career start was in Buffalo against Bills Mafia. Are you kidding me? Like that's what ended up happening. Kenny Pickett deserves the benefit of the doubt. We don't even know what this guy is yet. He's had 2.5 games of a sample size, and he hasn't been really bad in those. I know the stat sheet doesn't look great. A lot of those picks he has aren't on him, or it's a Hail Mary that doesn't really matter. He's not been bad. He's been very solid, to be quite honest with you, with a lot of stuff around him not going well. And also for Trubisky, we have 4 games and plus seasons in Chicago. We know who Mitch Trubisky is. I think everyone knows who Mitch Trubisky is. And so, yeah, it's Kenny Pickett. Let the young guy roll. You're 2-4. Learn what you have in this guy. Let's see what he can do against the Dolphins, Eagles. If he's healthy, he's got to play. And that's what's going to happen, too. The Steelers will play Kenny Pickett.
Pops, do you feel like we've moved into a time? Nick, you just touched on it, but Pops, I want to get your take on that since you were there when, the game of football was invented. Do you feel like
Nick, help me here, would you?
Do you feel like now more than ever, like there's just no patience with anything? It's like you got to put him out there and either he's the next thing or he's not. And there's no patience. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody, but like the patience factor doesn't seem to be there. Like people are already saying Pickett's a bust, Pickett's this. I'm like, no, he's not. Like you haven't given this guy a fair shot at anything yet.
There's a lot more pressure now than there used to be. Even back when Marino was drafted, okay, he had Woodley. David Woodley was playing ahead of him, and the only reason Marino came in, it was at halftime Monday Night Football. The Raiders were killing them. Marino came in, brought them back, had a chance to tie it. Marino started the next week against Buffalo, and that's all she wrote. There was a little more room for patience back then than there is now. If you're a top pick, you got to play and you got to produce, okay? Yep. And that's just the way it is. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver.
Speaking of the jersey that you have on, Nick, is Dan Marino still, it seems like you're pretty entrenched in Pittsburgh life, University of Pittsburgh. You're there. Is Marino still talked about even today with his contributions? He grew up in Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. He played for the University of Pittsburgh. Like, is Marino still a topic of conversation in those circles?
Always. He's the greatest quarterback to ever put on a Pitt uniform. He led them to many memorable games. Versus Georgia, for example, one of the best games in Pittsburgh sports history, in my mind. Dan Marino's a legend because look at him. He's turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Legitimately. And he grew up literally. So Pitt's campus is in a borough of Pittsburgh called Oakland.
Yeah.
And that is where he grew up. He grew up literally right off campus. So,
wow.
This is a true story of a kid that essentially lived on Pitt's campus his whole life, became a star Pitt quarterback, and obviously became a superstar in the NFL off of that. He's a true Pitt legend. Always will be. He's just below the Pitt legend that Pitt fans will know the most, obviously, is Tony Dorsett. He is the guy that won the Heisman Trophy, led him to a national championship, did everything. Number 2 on that list is easily Dan Marino. There's no doubt about it. He is everything personified in that Pitt man mold that everyone loves and exemplifies. So, yeah, he's talked about a lot. And even more so, I'll say this, around the NFL draft, he was talked so much about because the Steelers had a chance to get Dan Marino.
So did everybody, Nick.
But that's one of the biggest regrets of Dan Rooney's career, not taking the hometown kid, not taking Dan Marino. I don't know how much it factored into the pick of Kenny Pickett. I don't think it did at all, actually. But that was the talk, right? Are they going to let another Pitt quarterback go? That's Dan Marino. The specter of Dan Marino still haunts the Steelers because they weren't good in the 80s. If they had him, what would have happened? Who knows?
It's like Michael Jordan, Jordan dropped down to 3rd. There were rumors way back when the Rockets were going to trade this. What if Jordan would have ended up on the team with Olajuwon? Different city, different team. You just never know.
Excuse me. This is a football podcast, not a basketball podcast. Let's keep it on the gridiron.
But, hey, so Nick, let me ask you a question. I was talking with my boy Worm today at work, and we were trying to come up. I told him you were going to be on. What is your Mount Rushmore of University of Pittsburgh players?
Ooh,
Tough one. I like this one though. Again, Tony Dorsett has to be on that list.
Absolutely.
Absolutely has to be. Dan Marino has to be on that list. He's been great. For more recent picks, Aaron Donald. He has to be. He's one of the greatest football players to ever play on the defensive side of the ball. He's a hometown Pittsburgh guy. Like, that's another one. And then you get to the fourth spot, and it's a ton of guys that you could pick. You could pick Mike Ditka. You could pick Hugh Green. You could pick, Shady McCoy, Larry Fitzgerald. If you really want to go recent with the story, the connection to Pittsburgh, James Conner even has to be a consideration here. There are so many great Pitt players, and I didn't even name them all. Curtis Martin, Darrell Revis. I totally forgot about Darrell Revis. That's one. Tyler Boyd. There's so many great Pitt players. I lean towards this one usually being Larry Fitzgerald just because of how absurdly good he was on that team. But you can talk me into Ditka. You could talk me into just about any one of those names I mentioned, because look at Pitt is weird because they have produced so many actual football legends, and you wouldn't expect that from Pitt. Now, they were once a powerhouse, but a lot of their superstars are the post-powerhouse years, and that's actually making it quite great to put this together. I think those are my four, though. I think I'll do Tony Dorsett, Dan Marino, Aaron Donald, Larry Fitzgerald. I think that's my Mount Rushmore.
So this is a city of Pittsburgh question that I have for you, because good friend of mine and Caroline and I were talking about this. If you had to pick, the city of Houston is a football city. Astros in the ALCS, sixth straight time. Sorry, I had to point that out there. The city of Pittsburgh, like if you guys had to land on the team of the city, like if you only had to pick one, Pirates, Penguins, Steelers, is it still the Steelers who dominate the city of Pittsburgh, or has it moved a little bit, success of, recent years? Has it moved the needle at all in the city of Pittsburgh? I'm just curious. Anytime I have somebody on the show from, a city outside of Houston, I love to get that take on like temperature of the city. Where is that city? Where is their loyalty right now? If the rest of the, franchises went away, they would still want to ride with this team.
Well, it sure is the Pirates. Every week they're yelling for the owner to sell the team because Pirates haven't been good over the last 35 years, period.
That's tough.
Barry Bonds left, Sid Bream happened, and it was that. Really brief flash with Andrew McCutcheon, Garrett Cole, and those guys, but it has been painful, to say the least. But I do think the Steelers are still the team, although I will say Penguins mania is a thing, man. Just look at that core. Sidney Crosby is a legend. Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. You have so many long-term stays on that team that have been here for 17 years now. This is 17th season together. Of course, they're going to be revered a little bit.
Crazy.
And the Penguins are year in and year out in the playoffs. So, you're going to get playoff hockey. Everything's going to be significant. And you get to see one of the greatest hockey players to ever play the game. That's another thing, right? Not many cities have the allure of that. Like, wherever LeBron goes right now, he has the allure, because no matter what you think of LeBron, he is one of the greatest basketball players to ever play. I largely also think the same with the Angels. They're not good, but Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, come on. These guys are absurd players.
Right.
Aaron Judge, same thing. If you go see Tom Brady play in the NFL, you're watching greatness play.
Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, I get it. I know where you're going with this. I know exactly where you're going with this, Nick. I got it.
But yeah, like I think that's part of the allure of the Penguins. But I think the Steelers they've always been number one. I can't imagine them not being. Ever since the 70s, man, the Steelers have just been this bastion of success. And even in their bad years, everyone cared about them. Everyone poured their blood, sweat, and tears into the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the main thing in this town. It's Steelers. And sure, you might have your college team in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of college team fans in Pittsburgh between Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, Notre Dame, Ohio State. It's a fractured, splintered mess. But all of them are Steelers fans. And that's the one thing. You have this massive conglomerate of people. And it's not just in Pittsburgh, but the Steelers are number one. And you could just feel that on a Sunday. people are out early grocery shopping so they can go watch the Steeler game, for example. People move stuff around to go watch the Steeler game. And now, I don't see the same thing happening with the Penguins all the time. They have more games, obviously, but
Right.
a Steelers Sunday in Pittsburgh always feels extremely special. The tailgating is insane. The North Shore environment is part of the special allure of a Steelers game. So I think the Steelers are still number one. There are some people that will say it's a hockey town, but if you go to Canada, literally anywhere in Canada, you will understand what a real hockey town is.
Oh, for sure. Pops, who's your favorite hockey player in the league right now? And you can't name a guy that Nick just named.
Gordie Howe.
Okay, you're only about 27 years late.
Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr.
Okay, you're about 327 years late.
Okay. Mark Messier.
Yeah, that's not a bad name. That's about 22 years late, but so congrats to you. What we haven't talked about, Pops, to you, and then Nick, I want your opinion on this. Massive storylines on Sunday. Brian Flores makes his return to Miami. Stephen Ross is off of his 6-game suspension coming back this Sunday. The Miami Dolphins celebrating the 1972 team Sunday night in front of what I would assume to be a sellout crowd. Pops, what's the storyline you're looking forward to most Sunday night?
Well, I like the 50-year anniversary of honoring,
and Tua back, by the way, and Tua back.
All I'm going to say is I will quote Tua from earlier in this week. I'm not God. I'm just part of the team. So that came from him. Personally, I would love to see this offense put 30, 35 points on the board and personally rub it in Flores' face.
Well, that doesn't sound personal to you at all. Nick, I mean, what are you looking forward to? As a fan, watching the game Sunday night, I mean, do you have something that I just talked about there that you think that's going to impact the game most, I guess would be the best way to put it?
Oh, I think Tua's return's easily going to impact the game the most.
Sure. Yeah.
In terms of like allure and like storylines, obviously the Flores thing I think is the biggest one. I don't even know how many people know Stephen Ross is actually returning to this game outside of
Miami.
Or care.
Yeah, like well, it doesn't really matter. What does it change? Not that much, right? Right? Like he's back, cool. Another storyline that we didn't even name that I find intriguing. This is Minka Fitzpatrick's first time back in Miami.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like that exit was so messy. It's one of the messiest exits in recent memory in terms of like player that young getting moved. And the Dolphins knew Minka Fitzpatrick was going to be a good player, right? Like there's a reason they asked for a first-round pick for him. Like they knew he was going to be a really good player.
And got it too.
Yeah, and I don't know if they ever knew he'd be quite this good because the Steelers moved him in a completely new position. But that's also something because I know that I don't think Minka particularly likes going back to Miami. I don't think the fans are going to particularly like Minka going back to Miami.
But why, Nick? So, okay, first of all, who cares what Minka wants? Why would he not want to go back? The main reason he wanted out is standing on his sideline coaching the linebackers because no other team wanted that guy. So what is the big, oh my God, I don't want to go back? I'm just curious what your opinion is.
I just don't think he likes, I think when you as a player have such a bad experience in your mind, I should say this, in his mind, your first year in so many games, I think that just sticks in your head as a young player trying to get your footing in the NFL. I think that's like going to stick in his head. And it's not necessarily the organization. It can be, but it's the place itself. This is the place where he played most of his games as a young player before being shipped off to Miami, obviously. So I just think that's like a thing that in your memory, you harbor ill kind of feelings towards it. And so that's why I think Minka is not going to want to go back. I don't think you would want to go back to a place that you deemed unsuccessful, that you deemed as potentially your first failure ever in the game of football. Like Minka Fitzpatrick has been a 5-star recruit, a guy who was an All-American at Alabama, and now is a superstar. But Miami's still that one blemish, and he feels like he was wrong probably. And so that's what I imagine. is why Minka wouldn't want to go back. Now, is that going to be important? Probably not. Again, I think the biggest storyline of the game, field-wise, of who's going to win this game is going to be Tua returning, because he does move the needle more than Flores coaching on the other sideline. Maybe the Dolphins have more pep in their step with, Minka and Flores on the other side, but I largely think Tua, specifically him returning. And if we're talking about pep in step 2, how about the man that probably feels the most wronged by Brian Flores? He's coming back. So it's Tua's return to me is the biggest storyline that actually is going to matter. The intriguing storylines, though, they add a completely different level to this. And kind of the fact that the Steelers and the Dolphins, they aren't a rivalry, but boy, they have this kind of heated clashing ability to where I'll say this. Don't be surprised if on Sunday night we see a few skirmishes. Like, I could see it happening. I could 100% see it happening.
I want to see it happen. Like, that's fun to me. I mean, I don't know where y'all fall with this. We need more of that in sports. Like, that's part of what makes sports fun. I don't want these guys to be buddy and one team gets beat by 48 points and they're exchanging jerseys and pleasantries. No, I want you to, stick that guy in the ACL with a dull butter knife. You know what I mean? Obviously, I don't want anybody to get stabbed. You both know what I'm talking about. Like, I want a little passion back towards sports. Minka not wanting to be there I love that. That's a great point by
Jack Lambert never exchanged jerseys with anybody, okay? He had one thing on his mind. He didn't want to be anybody's pal, anybody's buddy. And I'll tell you, in the 70s, Nick, before y'all were born, they went at it. I mean, they went at it. But there was such a level of respect between Shula and Noel, and everybody respected the other coaches, that it's not like it is. I mean, I got to tell you today.
Yes.
These guys make a play. You make an interception, you recover a fumble. First of all, congratulations. You did your job. Way to go. But when these guys run to the end zone and they pose for the picture, dude, that drives me crazy. I mean, can you imagine what Chuck Noll would have done if that would have happened back in his day, or Don Shula? I mean, come on.
Do you like that? Do you like that, Nick? Like, do you like that,
Nick? I'm just curious.
Like the showmanship of what these guys do now.
I do, but then again, I've grown up in the era of the showman, right?
Yeah.
I like it because I like seeing the players' personalities shine through. I like seeing that become part of the game just as much as, say, a big catch or an explosive play, big interception. I like seeing the players show their personality. Because here's the thing that I view it from, because as a guy that played football a lot growing up, I view it as this. I put in all that hard work between OTAs, minicamp, training camp, during the week to practice. I make a big play. You should be celebrating it. Like, that's what I view it as. And I love to see them do it. Now,
fair enough.
I know that, back in the olden days, that wouldn't happen. And there were other ways to show your personality. Jack Lambert, for example, having no teeth and throwing guys to the ground because the kicker is going to get run over. Hello, Cowboys.
Love it.
Like, that's a way to do it too. And it's a different style. I do like the showman aspect of it, though, because I think we get to know these players more than just athletes. I think we get to see kind of who they are. And I find that funny. Like, Mike Gesicki's grittying, right? Like, that to me is a fun thing. It's something to laugh at. It's something that showcases a goofy side of Mike Gesicki. And I like that personally. Now, there are times when it can go overboard. Hello, Juju Smith-Schuster, but I do like the era of the showman a little bit because I think that they have a right to be celebrating to a degree. But that's just.
Well, I guess it irritates me because the last 3 weeks, every team we've played has celebrated in the end zone, some turnover or something. So, yeah.
I mean, that's fair. Just from a bird's eye view, is Tomlin's seat hot at all in Pittsburgh right now?
No. People will talk that up all the time. Mike Tomlin's going to decide when he leaves. I'll say this. I know people throw it to the side. He's had issues coaching. He's not perfect. He's a really, really good coach. Mike Tomlin is a great head coach. And one bad year or one bad start where they're 2-4. He started 2-6 before. He started worse than this thus far. I mean, it's not like Mike Tomlin hasn't had slow starts out of the gate, and his teams have dragged themselves back to the playoffs before. No, that's what happened last season. I mean, it's happened a lot before. Mike Tomlin has nothing to worry about at all.
If and when he leaves, who would you want to see be the next coach?
Yeah, it's a tough one. If he left tomorrow, you could
Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer. No, I would go more towards someone like a D'Amico Ryans, who's
Nice.
a great coach out in San Francisco. Has the Shanahan tree with him. I think he exudes so much charisma and talent on that side of the football. And the Steelers are just so much a defensive identity and organization. I think he fits it super well. A linebacker that played the game. That's who I would look for. Now, there are other guys that you have to throw into that equation. Eric Bieniemy, for example, obviously has been in Kansas City forever. But I like D'Amico Ryans. He's usually been my A1. If Tomlin ever left for whatever reason, I would go to D'Amico Ryans.
He was here. He started off with the Texans. I mean, class act. You're exactly right. He's a class act, and he has everybody's respect.
All right, gentlemen, it is time to call the game this weekend. Let's go to our special guest first. Nick, who wins this weekend, score, and why?
Yeah, the Steelers are finally getting a little bit healthier, and that's one of the storylines of this game. They're getting their whole secondary back this week, and they're going to be a lot healthier than they have been in recent weeks. And so that's an interesting storyline to me. The Steelers are going to finally have personnel to actually mix and match their defense. They're going to have the ability to use some different things that they haven't had in recent weeks because of the injuries. So I think it's going to be a close game. I'll say that. I think that this one, I think the Steelers are going to notch a few more points than people might think. I think Kenny Pickett is starting to get into a groove. I think Chase Claypool might have finally figured it out. I think that you look at that. But, man, Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, these guys are so talented. And I'm just not sure how Steelers match up against them consistently, drive in and drive out. Pittsburgh's defense will have a few stops here and there. I just don't think it'll be enough. I don't think the offense is consistent enough. And they turn the ball over a lot now with Kenny Pickett. He's a rookie. You expect that. I think this will be a close game, but I like the Dolphins here. Give me like 31-21, something like that. If the Steelers will find success, I think they'll keep it close. But I think Tua has been playing at such a high level. He really has been. I mean, he looks like a bona fide franchise quarterback early in this year. So I'll take the Dolphins in this one.
All right, well, good, because we've had a great show. We'd love to have you back on. But if you went Pittsburgh, obviously we would not be able to do that. I kid. Pops, what do you got?
I'm going 34-17 Dolphins. I think
Dolphins win or lose?
Dolphins win.
Okay, I just wanted to, for the masses.
And it's not that I'm saying that Tua is the savior. Oh, my God, how great he is. But I just think the team and the crowd will be so jazzed up that he's back. You got Armstead coming back. Howard is a week healthier now. No TJ Watt. That guy scares the heck out of me. I think Fitzpatrick lines up on whatever side Tyreek Hill is, and I think that's going to open up for Waddle and Gesicki. But I mean, the Steelers always scare me, but I'm going 34-17 and give Flores the game ball at the end.
So Dolphins 28-24. The line in Vegas is Dolphins -7. I don't think they cover. I think it's way too close between Tomlin, Najee Harris. That offensive line is sketchy in Pittsburgh at best, I would call it. But Nick is right. That defense is legit, getting healthy. 28-24 Dolphins. We do want to get your take on this, Nick. Is it true the Steelers are trading Chase Claypool to the Green Bay Packers by the deadline?
I don't think so.
Thanks for the good question, Cap.
Like, it's a good question. I just don't see the logic in it. Like, why would the team trade the guy who's second on the team in catches when they got a rookie quarterback that needs the big 6'4" target out of the middle field in the slot? It doesn't make much sense to me. And also, what are they going to actually get for Claypool? A 4th-round pick? Is anyone actually going to pay a 2nd or 3rd-round pick for Chase Claypool? I'm not convinced they will. If you're not going to get more, if a team's not going to overpay for him, you still got a year left on his contract. Just keep the guy. Really, it doesn't make much sense to me. But maybe the Packers or the Bears or whoever is so wide receiver needy is willing to give the Steelers a 2nd-round pick. I think in that case, sure. I just don't see it happening, and I don't see the Steelers trading him because I'm not sure who the heck would step in. Calvin Austin, their 4th-round pick, is probably going to be out for the season. So who is it? Miles Boykin, Gunnar Olszewski, Steven Sims? No. Chase Claypool is probably staying in Pittsburgh.
I'm a big fan of this Pickens kid, though, out of Georgia, this George Pickens kid. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be an absolute stud for y'all.
I do, too. I think that George Pickens is going to be phenomenal. I also think he's a rookie and not quite there yet.
Yep.
But he looks great. He has those flashes, the one-handed catch in Cleveland, for example. You see what he can do. He is absurd.
Crazy.
But
do you think the Dolphins, if they trade Gesicki, do you think they can get? And I don't want a draft choice. I'm bored with draft choices. Can they get a player that they could slot in right now and help them? What do you think? What's his value?
Yeah, tight ends values are interesting. Gesicki more of a flex type guy. That's more of a receiver, which is interesting. Those guys are valuable, but he's not like a complete tight end. You know, George Kittle, for example.
Right.
He's a good player, not a great player. I mean, you're looking probably at like a 4th-round pick in that area. If you're trying to plug in a player, you're probably looking at more of a rotational piece, whether that's on the D-line, the linebacking core. Like no one's going to trade a starting lineman, for example. Like you're not going to patch a hole up in the interior, or if Armstead gets hurt again, I don't think you're finding a tackle better than Greg Little.
God, please. Please, I want you there, Nick. You're better than Greg Little, Nick.
Would you attach, if you were Miami, would you attach a 2nd to Gesicki to get Roquan Smith from Chicago?
That could be interesting. A 2nd's a hefty price, but if the Dolphins feel like this is their year, sure. I mean, listen, Tua's rookie contract isn't going to be lasting much longer. And you know how important we have found out how important rookie contracts are to going to Super Bowls. So you have to go all in on that. And Roquan's one of the few linebackers, in my opinion, along with guys like Shaq Leonard and Fred Warner and those guys that are truly game changers at the linebacker position that can do different things that just no one else can.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that one makes sense. I also think, like, if you're just trading Mike Gesicki, though, maybe it's someone in the DB rotation gets in.
Thank you.
Nick Needham's out for the year. There's injuries in that unit. So maybe you get a slot corner out of it, right? This team with a lot of corner depth feels like they can expend a corner because they really need a tight end for their quarterback. Denver Broncos. Maybe.
I think they need a lot more than a tight end in Denver. But like William Jackson in Washington, who went to the University of Houston. Thank you so much. William Jackson, that's interesting. I feel like, Gesicki for Jackson. I probably want a draft pick from them in addition to Jackson. But I like that CB route.
I could also see Bryce Hall from the Jets is reportedly on the market. Now, I don't know how you feel about trading in the division. That could be the one thing, but maybe you get Hall and a pick for Gesicki if you're willing to do that. Obviously, though, Dolphins are trading Gesicki in the division. That surely shows what they think of him. So I don't know about that one, but who knows what corners are actually on the market. Usually, I always say this. Usually the guys that get traded at the trade deadline are guys you don't even hear about. So who knows? Who knows who's out there?
That's fair. All right, so before we wrap up, last 2 questions for you, Nick. Best pizza in Pittsburgh? We asked this question to all of our guests. Best pizza in your city, and who wins the Super Bowl this year?
Best pizza, Rockaways. That is a little bit outside the city, but it is phenomenal. It's one of those pizzas in Pittsburgh that I would say rivals anything in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. That good. So you got to try it if you get up to Pittsburgh. Phenomenal pizza. And who's going to win the Super Bowl? Right now at this juncture,
Buffalo.
Yep, that's who it's got to be.
I was about to say, don't just pick the Dolphins just because you're on the show. I mean,
No, I mean, the Bills, man. I mean, they're so good. They're firing on all cylinders. Defensively, they're not even healthy yet. Trey White's not even back. Like, they are going to be so good. Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in football right now. Gabe Davis is turning into a true, just deep threat extraordinaire. Stephon Diggs is so good. And the real scary thing recently, Devin Singletary and James Cook have been running the football well. They have a running back run game now. It's not just Josh Allen. If they have that, I have no idea how you stop the offense. I don't know how you do it. And certainly someone will probably figure out eventually. It'll probably be Bill Belichick, knowing who always will. But man, right now, I can't not pick them. They look like the best team in football, and they have a great head coach in Sean McDermott too. So I got to go with the Bills.
Okay, last hypothetical question.
Yes.
Hold on. It's gone. 3-run homer, Alex Bregman. Sorry to interrupt. Hypothetical, because you're an AFC North person. If whatever happens at the end of this year and Tua says aloha or it doesn't work out or whatever, what is your thoughts on if they go hot and heavy after Lamar Jackson? What's your thoughts? You see him a lot more than we do.
Lamar's that guy. People malign Lamar as a passer. He's a better passer than people think. Yeah, he has a few duds here and there. Remember, you know how Tua's underthrows get kind of villainized on Twitter all the time, right?
Yes, Nick. Yes, we do know that. Thank you for pointing that out.
That's what happens with Lamar Jackson. He makes one bad throw, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's a running back." No, he's the most dynamic runner, maybe not named Michael Vick. You can even argue he's better than Michael Vick as a runner in the open field at the quarterback position of all time. And then you have him with a rocket arm. The issue is the Ravens refuse to build an actual passing game around him. Their passing game is consisted of throw it up to Mark Andrews and hope everything works. Get him an actual receiver, and I think you see what he could do. You throw him in the Dolphins offense, just sprinkle in some more quarterback designed runs and all of that, and I think you have the best offense potentially in football. So, yeah, Lamar Jackson would be phenomenal in Miami. There's no doubt about that.
Now, I was that guy, Nick, that when he was even still in college, when he came out, I was that guy who he's an athlete. You know, he's a freak athlete. But part of that was because I was bitter that we didn't take him, you know? So I just have that in the back of my mind. Michael tells me, nah, it's not going to happen. I'm just throwing it out there. You know, we're finally getting back to South Florida being a desired destination. Players want to come. He's going to be on the market. Just wanted to get your opinion because you see him probably week in and week out playing in the North.
Yep.
Well,
Great
Nick,
football player.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, man. We want you back on, you know, as soon as you would like to come back on. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah, man. I appreciate for having me on. This is real fun because it's not just football. It's a culture around it and everything. And I love that. I love that this game has more than just football on the field. Although that's obviously my favorite part of the game, but still, it's awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Do you have anything you want to plug before we wrap the show up?
Yeah, follow me at Farabaugh, FB, as you can see my last name, FB on Twitter. Also, if you are a Pitt fan, there are some Pitt fans I know that live in South Florida that are Dolphins fans. I know people up in Pitt that are from South Florida that are Dolphins fans. Make sure to check out the Locked On Pitt podcast. We'll discuss our pains as Pitt fans through that together if you are one. So make sure to check it out.
Oh, man. You can follow me on Twitter at MikeBrown_2020, the mothership of the Bottoms Up Fins Up. You can follow the Fins Talk Sports Network at Fins Talk Network. Once again, Sunday Night Football, Dolphins, Steelers. Nick, I hope we have a tie. I think that way both of us would win, but in the end, I hope the Dolphins win. It's
Michael, I'd rather kiss you than have a tie.
Okay, Dad, let's go ahead and get beyond that. It's 7:47. OU still suck. JETS SUCK. And until next time, Dolphin fans, fins up.